blockchain and crypto assets, cryptocurrencies. The vernacular you will see is evolving. And so you will see me sometimes coming in and out of terminology because it's not quite industry standard yet. And I think this also shows you that the industry, even though it's 9 years old, if you look at it from Bitcoin terms, it's actually quite nascent. And there's a lot of evolutionary things happening. And so what I want to do today, because I'm actually pretty sure, and this is a bit unusual for me, I'm pretty sure I don't know most of you in the room. And I don't usually go to conferences where I don't know a soul. But I actually think this is also a great opportunity for me to help do a couple things in the 20 minutes that I've got. One, talk about some of the terminology, because this industry's got its own speak language. And then secondly, give you a sense of some of the trends and the culture of this developing world. And so let's get started. The world of magic internet money. So some people have dubbed it as magic internet money, and actually there was a large conference, crypto investment conference in New York at the end of November. And there was actually a guy outside, I'm pretty sure it was the same guy who's got the sign out there that says, "I am Satoshi Nakamoto." He actually had a sign that said, "Give me magic internet money," with a QR code. I'm not sure if anyone gave him any, but hey, he could have done all right that day. What I want to just illustrate here is that this industry is a quirky one. There is actually a term called keep crypto weird, and people do want to keep it weird. Weird in the sense that it's nerdy, it's technical, it's actually based on decades of cryptography, math, technology, and lots of very interesting thinking around economics, believe it or not. So when you think about, and I do a little bit of tongue-in-cheek here, the world of magic internet money is actually grounded in a lot of facts, figures, and science. So with that, it's also got a bit of humor. So there's a nice, interesting, quirky mix of things going on. So I want to talk about two topics. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened in 2017. For those of you who are not in this space intimately, you probably have seen some of the headlines in the mass media. A lot of those headlines, I have to say, have brought cryptocurrencies in particular to the fore, and it's kind of on everyone's mind. It definitely came up at Christmas and Thanksgiving. I was surprised, considering I've talked about it for 4 years with my family and nobody really paid any attention, but now everyone wants a wallet and figure out how to buy Bitcoin. And then I want to talk a little bit about 2018, because actually 2018 is a critical year. And it's a year that I believe, and again, this is my opinion, and please take it for what it is. I've been in the industry now for about 6 years, starting with Bitcoin and now evolving into various other elements. This is really the year about the infrastructure being built out. It is about tackling issues like scalability. It's almost too popular in a way. We've got issues around transaction fees. We've got issues around transactions actually going through in a timely fashion in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Why? Because all of a sudden it's become very, very popular. And that's a quality problem. But these are problems that need to be fixed. And then secondly, I do want to talk about blockchain for good. There's actually a social and political element, an undertone that kind of promoted a lot of, or encouraged a lot of people to get into this space in the early days. And there is a view that people have moved away from this with the crypto mania or the cryptocurrency mania. So whatever your opinions may be at the end of this, I just want to kind of lay it out for you. So why is this important and why do people care so much? 2017, well, here's the thing. We're talking about data as money, data as value. This is why people care. Because frankly, when I look at blockchain itself, it's infrastructure. It's infrastructure technology that, frankly, really people shouldn't care that much about. No one really knows, or unless you're technical, no one really understands how TCP/IP works, and yet we use our internet and phones, and people just go about their days assuming things are going to work. So why do people care so much about blockchain? It's exactly the same thing in many ways. It's core infrastructure to get things to run in a much smoother way. I think it's because people are looking at this and realizing this is not about just us emailing information around and communicating better. This is the possibility of actually taking things that we think are valuable in the real world, tokenizing it, making it digital, And all of a sudden, that definition of money and value completely changes. It's a game changer. And we're beginning to see that happening. And I think this is what's captivated the attention of lots of people. So, like I mentioned, it started with 2008, the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper on Bitcoin. I suggest you read it if you have any interest at all in getting started. It's the way most people got started in this space. And if you actually read it carefully, you'll notice there's never a mention of blockchain. There's mention of blocks, and there's mention of chains. But there's no such thing as blockchain in the actual white paper. I think someone else termed that. So let's talk about crypto asset classification. So I actually break it up into 3 categories, and this is the simplest way I can get my head around what the heck is going on. And when I say cryptocurrency, I tend to talk about the pure crypto tokens that represent an actual technical network. So Bitcoin is a token that represents the Bitcoin network and protocol. Ether is the token that represents the Ethereum network and protocol. And so I tend to put those in one category. And then another category that I find is very interesting that's emerging is digital assets. How do you take physical stuff, digitize it, and then all of a sudden you can fractionalize it, you can have fractional ownership, and you can sell it in different ways. It's happening in the real estate market. People are talking about if you take a piece of property and you were to tokenize that into a token, whatever you want to call it, and you were to break it up, what if 1,000 people could own one piece of property or a building or whatever have you? The possibilities are actually endless, and this is where a lot of this development is now happening in the digital asset space. Royal Mint Gold is a UK government-backed gold initiative, real gold with a token, RMG. That's one of many different types of tokens that are coming into play. Digitized fiat currency. The reason why I put that in a separate bucket is because governments that issue money, whether it's sterling, whether it's US dollars, that is government controlled. So if they were to digitize it, and what do I mean by that? Let me give you just one quick example. In the UK, they've talked about what if the UK government, who has over 1 million workers who work for NHS, the National Healthcare System, what if they could directly pay their employees and bypass the entire banking system? So the central bank would just pay directly into people's mobile wallets. Well, you'd actually be bypassing the banking system, and it actually saved them tens of thousands, tens of millions of pounds a year in admin costs. It's a possibility. That's what I would consider digitized sterling. So the screens are red today and yesterday and the day before and the day before that. I just checked the Bitcoin price. It's actually at 10,000 today. And it's moving lower. People are calling it a bloodbath. People are saying it's carnage in the markets. But here's the reality. A year ago, it hadn't even broken 1,000, or I think it was just at 1,000. So it's all relative to when you came in or how you're playing the markets. So I take it with a grain of salt. I'd be very frank with you, the people who are true believers in the technology are buying and are still holding. So I think it remains to be seen. There are now thousands of these. But the top 10 represent the vast majority of the tradable tokens or cryptocurrencies. I'm not going to linger on too long on this one, but I just wanted to say there are a lot of people who still believe that we're sitting at a very early stage. Even though Bitcoin's been around for 9 years, there are still lots of people who believe that this is a multi-decade, multi-year, multi-decade evolution. We'll see how fast this grows, but it's set to grow again 2018, 19, 20. ICO. So if you walk away from anything, you'll probably want to know what ICO is. Initial coin offering. This is a way that the market has, at least in this industry, market has actually figured out how to change paradigms in terms of how people raise money. So if you think about this technology's ability to disrupt lots of things, well, think about disrupting the venture capital industry or the fundraising industry. Imagine if you had an idea and you wrote a white paper and you then floated out to the world and you managed to get $2, $3, $4, $5 million overnight within minutes. Well, that's what's happening. And last year, and I apologize, the screen's not that great, but the only number you really need to think about is the fact that about $6 billion was raised this way, which is also causing a headache for the regulators. And I don't blame them, because what's happened whenever you have lots of money being created very quickly is you have good ideas and good people trying to create real companies who deserve that money, and then you have a lot of, you have other bad actors who are taking advantage of people and committing crimes and scams. And this is what's happening, unfortunately, in the space. I personally have invested in a handful of ICOs. I actually stopped over the summer into the fall, and I've actually taken a hiatus because I'm waiting for regulation to come in, and I'm waiting for actually some of the market to clean itself up. So I think it's going to be a combination of self-enforcement, but also I think regulatory bodies will start coming up with rules in 2018. So, is it one blockchain? No, it's actually many blockchains. We're going to see blockchain upon blockchain upon blockchain. And unfortunately, that is just a fact of the way we're going to see things. The proliferation of blockchains, whether they're private, whether they're public, whether they're permissioned or not permissioned, these are details I'm not going to get into, but they're proliferating. And these are important developments. I actually encourage lots of blockchains to be developed because we're still in experiments as to which combination or which technologies are actually going to work themselves out and be truly the winners in the space. There may be some Netscapes, there may be some Yahoos, and there may be some Googles to come. We just don't know. I think it's still evolving. But here are the benefits. At the end of the day, why do people want this? It's about the transparency. It's about the ability to not necessarily trust a centralized party to say that something is true. It's the ability to transact in a way that's more efficient and cost-effective. It's the ability to do micropayments anywhere in the world quickly. It's the ability to also reduce fraud. If you have transparency, if you have the ability to record keep and actually share that and keep the system honest, or sorry, keep actors in the system honest, could you mitigate fraud? And these are some of the attributes of why I think a lot of different industries and a lot of different people are interested, because the applications are actually quite pervasive. Some blockchains to know. I just threw a handful out here. I know some friends are probably going to be upset that I didn't include some of the others. There are many great ones. These are just a few that I threw up on the screen just for. And then smart contracts. Smart contracts are applications that will be built on top of blockchains. So think of them as programmable processes. And they don't have to be an actual legal contract. One of the first examples is a vending machine. A vending machine actually has smart contracts built in. Think about it. You identify something you want, you put the money in, you push the button, and the machine gives you what you asked for, hopefully. Well, that's what a smart contract would be at its simplest level. But what we're talking about here are smart contracts that would be able to process and do things that are automatic, recursive, and would keep going until the smart contract were to, let's say, be stopped or there was an end date. But it would literally keep going. And the idea is that it would automate many, many, many different processes. So I want to talk about 2018 because I think this is where we're going to see a lot of rubber, meets the road type of things going on. So geographic dispersion and distribution. I want to actually say I've traveled the world the last 2 years talking to lots of different people, whether it's government officials all the way down to farmers sitting in plantations in Africa. There is something really interesting going on here. Because of the internet, the mobile phone, the potential for blockchain, IoT, what I call tech convergence. We have the possibility here now, and if you think about the developing world and all the people that they talk about who don't have access to financial services, there's now the possibility that because people have phones, they will be delivered things on their phones that they never had delivered before. And that includes everything from financial services to prices to the ability to document and collateral manage their own assets that were never ever recorded before, their own identity, the data on their health, financials, whatever have you. These are things that are just starting to really develop. And there are countries that you'd be surprised with, and I'm going to show you a few in a couple of seconds. But the other thing I want to talk about is sort of the use cases that are available and also the education that's going to need to continue throughout 2018. There's a huge amount of mainstream discussion going on, but also we're finding that there's a lot of misinformation that's being spread. So I think one of the things that we need to do as an industry is be better about the education piece, which there's lots of discussions about how we do that. But what I find really very interesting is going to be the non-financial use cases. So what's really interesting in 2018? I would say digital identity. Everyone talks about this whole self-sovereign identity piece being the gateway for blockchain to really work. What does that actually mean? Well, the concept is that I would have my own online app or mobile app. I would be able to have, from birth to death, all of my personal records, my financials, my school academic records, my preferences, likes for TV, music, anything available to me, and I would only disclose it to you, institution A, B, or C, if I choose to. This is about flipping the paradigm. Now, that's the dream. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen, or it may take a very long time for that to happen. But there are lots of people out there working on this whole concept of self-sovereign identity. How do you control your own identity, and how do you control your own data? Real estate, I mentioned before. I think energy is another really interesting area. I also think advertising is going to be hugely interesting this year, as well as healthcare. There are a lot of industries where this is starting to percolate, and some are more advanced than others, but I think it will continue. Real-world use cases. Things are getting real in blockchain. So if you thought that it's all a bunch of experimentation and it's not getting real, you're going to start seeing more of it in 2018. And these are actually examples of what happened in 2017. We had big companies, we had governments, and we had various different big companies like Walmart and SAP and many, many others do live projects that either hit supply chain, land registry, payments. There's Malta putting academic certificates on the blockchain. These are all things that you will see continually evolving. And I think there'll be more and more of this. So I put a few flags up because some will be obvious to you, but the point I want to make here is maybe a few will not be obvious to you unless you happen to be a flag aficionado. I think you should not underestimate the ability of some of the smaller countries to take a lead in this space. Countries like Estonia are actually doing amazing things in technology and blockchain. And they're promoting their entire population, they're attracting talent. And because if you think about a global world where talent can move and more freely get access to information, they will move to places where where countries will create an environment to have this sort of innovation. The other thing I want to focus on is just blockchain consortia and regulatory sandboxes. So governments are getting involved here. Regulatory agencies are getting involved here. That doesn't usually happen with tech. Usually there's a huge lag period where tech kind of runs with it, and then you have legal and reg and everything coming in later. But what we've seen, and I've been in the financial services markets for quite a while, is actually, they're still behind, but they're not quite as behind as we thought they would be. There are actually quite a few experts in the crypto space or blockchain space working at these regulatory agencies. So that's an interesting trend that we're seeing that we'll see, I think, continued collaboration with government and regulation. And who knows? The problem with that, though, is if you think about it from a purist standpoint, this stuff is supposed to be decentralized and not controlled. So it's going to be interesting to see where the friction points are as this evolves. And then, as I mentioned, small countries. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Mauritius is a tiny island of 1.6 million people. They are in the Indian Ocean, technically part of Africa. And yes, I had to look at a map before I went there too. It's off the coast of South Africa, which is Madagascar is off the coast of South Africa, and then Mauritius is off the coast of Madagascar. So it's pretty far out there. But this little country is doing things in blockchain. You'd be surprised, and you're going to hear more about them. They've already made noise last year in 2017. We're doing a project, the company that I've founded with another colleague of mine, we are going to be launching some initiatives out of Mauritius, working with the UN to focus on actually providing governments the ability to record and monetize their natural resources better, so that they have a fairer chance of being able to make sure that people don't take advantage of their natural resources, especially indigenous plants. So that's a separate use case that we're working with them on. But there's a lot of interesting projects coming out of many small countries. So the reason why I emphasize this is because don't underestimate you're going to be hearing blockchain from a lot of different corners. And with that, I know I did a bit of whirlwind, but I hope you get a sense of where we are, and thank you for your time.